Hey everybody, and welcome to Lex's Lounge. Today I wanted to show you guys how I make my hypoallergenic bread. My son is allergic to a whole bunch of things: soy, dairy, eggs. So I'm really limited in the kind of bread I can make. So I'll show you guys my recipe. This recipe starts out with 1 1/3 cups of water, which is really straightforward. You add the water in. And then the next thing is, instead of adding butter or margarine, I add olive oil because my son's allergic to dairy. And you add 2 tablespoons, actually 2.5 tablespoons of the olive oil. And by the way, guys, I will have the written recipe down in the video description for you guys. And we're going to be doing a Breadmaker recipe, as you guys can tell from the Breadmaker, because how many people have time to make bread from scratch? The next thing we're going to add is 2 teaspoons of salt, which is always very useful. 2 teaspoons of salt go in, and then we're going to add 4 tablespoons of sugar. And as you guys can see, I'm using brown sugar. Wherever you're able, switch out white sugar for brown sugar in your life, because you can usually use brown sugar for any recipe that has white sugar, and it's a whole lot healthier for you. So 1/3 tablespoon of sugar and 1/4 tablespoon of sugar right there. Now that we've put in the salt and the sugar and the olive oil, we're going to go to the big, meaty, important part, and that is the flour. And we're going to get 4 1/4 cups of flour. And while I get the flour, I'll tell you guys about my Breadmaker here. This is a Soji-Rushi, a Japanese bread maker, and this company is actually more known for making rice cookers. They make like the best rice cookers in the world. But I decided to try out their bread maker, which is a little bit more expensive, but very, very well made, and I've loved it ever since. It's so good that one time I thought it was broken, so I sent it in to Soji-Rushi for repair, and they phoned me back and they're like, hey man, this thing isn't broken, and actually they almost never break, so it's probably your yeast. And sure enough, I tried out a different yeast and everything worked out good. Last 1/4 cup of the flour, and then we're going to add that yeast. Now what you want to do is you actually want to make a little dip in your flour, like a little, you know, little penetration, and that's where you want to put your yeast. The yeast, I'm using bread machine yeast, but actually you can use any kind of yeast that you want. It just changes how much you need to add. I add about 1.5 teaspoons, and that's really all I need. I find if I go 2 teaspoons, like the recipe requests in the manual, the bread rises too far. And now we're going to put this in here, and I'll also link to a Soji-Rushi bread maker for you guys in the description as well. And this recipe makes white hypoallergenic bread. And we're going to start it off, and like most bread makers, this is going to take about 3.5 hours to do. So I'll show you guys the end result when it's all done. Ta-da! There you go, guys. The bread is ready, hot and steaming. And it doesn't matter whether you're allergic to a bunch of different stuff, you can still eat this. Making bread, by the way, is also a pretty decent investment, but only if you actually commit to do it, because the loaf made on a bread maker costs a couple bucks as opposed to a store-bought loaf that maybe costs $4. So you got to make quite a few loaves to make it worthwhile. So there you go. Anyway, that's the show. Subscribe, hit that like button, and we'll see you next time on Lex's Lounge.